What's up, guys, and welcome to yet another episode of the Isn't It Crazy podcast. And I say yet another one because I know there's someone out there thinking he hasn't gave up yet. And yes, no, it's going to take a very long time for me to give up. I love doing this. It's a lot of fun for me to do, especially these episodes. Today, I'm going to be talking all about MMA. And when I do one of these episodes, not only do I find new fighters to root for, it also makes the card a little bit more interesting because I do choose who I think is going to win. So it gives me somebody to root for throughout the whole main card. And obviously, I'm talking about UFC 254, Gaichi versus Khabib. It's going to be taking place in Abu Dhabi Fight Island. And this time around, they will have prime time. So the fights will start around 8 o'clock Abu Dhabi time, which means that in the US, it's going to be around 2 p.m. Eastern time, 11 p.m. Pacific time. And if you're listening in Chicago, where most of my fan base is, it's going to be around 1 p.m. here. So plan accordingly and make sure you don't show up at the bar around 8 o'clock thinking you're going to watch all these great fights and then find out that they already happened. But what can I say? Obviously, the UFC is going to stack this card because it's a Gaethje versus Khabib fight. Khabib is one of those fighters that bring a lot of eyes to the sport, so they want to stack it and put their prime fighters out there. So there's good fights throughout the whole card. It's not like just the main event is the good one. There's good fights from the first fight to the last fight. So without further ado, that's what I want to get into. Before we get started, I do want to mention that my MMA podcasts are structured in a way where the casual fan and the hardcore get a little bit of something when they listen to this. So the way I do it is I talk about each and every fight that's on the main card, and I give you guys a little background on each fighter and why I think the fight's going to be interesting. Then I get a little more technical, tell you guys what I like about each individual fighter. Then at the end, I pick a winner. And not importantly, I tell you guys why I think he's going to win. So everybody gets a little bit of something when they listen. Whether you're a casual fan or a hardcore fan, you come out satisfied, I guess. Hopefully that's the goal of this MMA podcast. And so let's get started with the first fight, which is Ayan Kutilaba from the Republic of Moldova with a record of 15-5 versus Magomed Ankalaev with a record of 13-1, and he is from Dagestan, Russia. Like I said, UFC is very smart. They're going to stack this card with Russians and, more importantly, Russians that believe in the Muslim faith. So people in the Middle East have somebody to root for and watch the whole card. So very smart on their part. And this is the second time around that these two have fought. I'll get more into why they ran it back, but I want to talk about Ayan Kutilaba first, just because when I first saw him, I became an instant fan. This guy was one of those guys that was headhunting, was looking for a knockout, and he's so intense every time he starts a fight. If you look at each and every fight, he walks up to his opponent and nearly pushes him, and he actually did on the first time he fought Magomed Ankalaev. He walked across the ring and literally pushed him with his chest, and they almost started fighting right there and then, and they had to get separated. And that's how you knew, man, this fight is going to be spicy. This fight is going to be good. So, I like his style. He has a very brawler style of fighting, which is concerning because he's so focused on getting the headshots that he leaves himself open for a lot of counter striking, which can be concerning because you could get knocked out like that. Most people do get knocked out like that because it's punches that they don't see coming. But where he lacks, he makes up in aggression. He's great at takedowns, and he tries to close the fight really fast. He's trying to knock you out in the first minute of the fight, which I wouldn't say is the worst type of game plan, because if you do knock out somebody in the first minute, then you're fresh, you sustain no damage, and you can fight more often, make more money. But when it comes to fighting Magomed Ankalaev, he has a handful because Magomed Ankalaev is very patient, great leg kicks. He could kick you on the head, midsection, and in the legs. His ability to switch it up with the leg kicks really fast makes him very dangerous. And it kind of helps him keep Kutabella at a distance for the time being when they first start. Ankalaev is a very slow starter. He likes to gauge his length and throw out some feelers, throw out some leg kicks, throw out some punches. But Homeboy is very accurate with his shots. Conor McGregor once said that accuracy and timing beat speed and power any day. And I truly believe that. If you could land the right punch, it's better than a hard punch that maybe gets rolled off the cheek or just doesn't connect in the right spot. So being accurate is a way more advantage than just being powerful. And this is what you get to see in this fight. You get to see Kutabella be just strength and viciousness and aggression versus somebody who's going to time his punches, time his kicks, and make sure he's accurate. Now, why is this fight interesting at all? Who cares about these guys? Why they're in the first fight of the main card? Usually, boxing has taught us that the main card, the first fights aren't that great. But what the UFC does in their model is they try to keep it interesting throughout the whole card. And this fight had some controversy the first time they fought, which was because right at the beginning of the fight, Magomed Ankalaev kicked Kutalaba twice in the head. And when I tell you his kicks are really good, it's because they're fast and they're accurate. And it was just 1-2 on the same side of the head. Kutalaba didn't have the time to even cover himself. So he got hit pretty hard twice. And for some weird reason, Kutalaba thought it'd be a good idea to play. Maybe he was rocked, but what makes me think otherwise is he thought it was a good idea to play possum. So he starts shaking his head and wobbling his feet, and it looked like he was out, like he was rocked. And Kevin McDonald, the referee, called the fight. And the moment he calls the fight, Kutalaba turns to him and is alert and seems fine. And he's like, "What did you just do? You just lost me this fight." That's what makes me think otherwise. Because, if he was still kind of like out of it, then you could say he was rocked. And yes, it was a good stoppage. But the fact that he was aware of his surroundings, aware of what had just happened, means that, he was playing possum, and stupid of him to even do that. Don't give the referee any reason to stop the fight. Obviously, I think he learned his lesson. And you could hear Magomed Ankalaev say, like, honestly, it was the ref's fault, not mine. Don't be mad at me. And, Michael Bisping came in there and he even said it was the ref's fault on the early stoppage. So they decided to run it back. And, it seemed like a very promising fight before that stoppage. Both Kutalaba came in fucking throwing haymakers, and Ankalaev's kicks were the ones that kept him at bay, and obviously hit him twice in the head just to remind him, hey, like, if you're going to fight like that, then I can attack you and make you respect me. So hopefully Kutalaba learned his lesson, but I still think that Ankalaev is going to win this fight because although Kutalaba is very vicious, headhunts, has knockout power, Ankalaev has great counter strikes, great kicks, and a great takedown defense. And if it does go to the ground, Ankalaev still has the advantage because he has great ground and pound and can reverse any type of submission that he's in. So I just see the more skilled and well-rounded fighter winning this fight, just because he can match Kutalaba's striking ability. And when you do that, you have a great advantage to win the fight. So that's why I'm picking Magomed Ankalaev to win the first fight, and it's going to be a good one. don't blink because it might end very fast. I think it doesn't go past 2 rounds. I'm going to choose Ankalev. That's who I'm betting for. And we'll see what happens. So the Russians are 1-0 when it comes to the main card. All right. So moving on to the second fight in UFC 254, you got Lauren Murphy versus Liliyaf Shakirova. And now Lauren Murphy obviously is from the US. She's from Alaska with a record of 13-4. And Lilia Shakirova is from Russia. We're starting to see a trend here. But her record is 0-0 because this is her first fight in the UFC. She will be making her UFC debut and stepping in for Cynthia Calvillo, who was supposed to fight Lauren Murphy on this card. And I will tell you guys why she's not fighting with her in a little bit. So Lauren Murphy is from Alaska and she looks like a character from the Ice Road Truckers. If you haven't seen it, it's a great show on Amazon Prime. These people are gritty. They seem like their face has just been battered through like shit weather for years. And she embodies this type of person. Like you could see her and you're like, oh yeah, she's from fucking somewhere like Boston where it snows 6 months out of the year. But she's from Alaska where it snows all the fucking year, I guess. And not only does she look like she's from Alaska, she also fights like she's from Alaska. She's gritty, she's a brawler, very boxing heavy, and she loves to pressure. She loves to, you know, most of her fights end up with her face being bloodied. And if she's going to take one, she's going to give you two. Background on her was that she took her son to an MMA gym and signed up for the adults class. And couple years later, she's in the UFC and she's beating the fuck out of some of the very good fighters in the flyweight division. And there's not much I could say about Liliyaf Shakirova. I did see a couple of videos on YouTube, and you can't compare the level of fighter that comes from the UFC to some nobody from Russia. The girl that she fought in this YouTube video 2 years ago just seemed like she was there. She got paid like $10 to be there. And she said, fucking, I'm going to take a couple punches. So there's not much to say about this fighter. There's a reason why the UFC would even consider her being on the card. They must have seen something. And she's very brutish. She's like big and muscular and almost looks like kind of a guy. But given that the fights that I saw, the moment she fought somebody that seemed like they knew what they were doing, she struggled. And she clearly outweighed this girl by like 20 pounds. So she just fucked her up anyways. She took her down and just won the fight out of sheer strength. I think that could be one of her attributes, that she's very strong and maybe could take a lot of punches, but I don't see her winning this UFC debut. Usually, when fighters get a UFC debut, they get a whole training camp and they know who they're gonna fight, and they could plan and have something to execute in the octagon. Um, the reason why Lilivia Shirakova Kova, I don't even know how to say her last name, it's so hard, is fighting is because Cynthia Calvillo, who is number 3 in the flyweight division, tested positive for COVID-19 and was pulled out last Thursday. So they needed a quick replacement, and they told Liliyaf, hey, do you want to fight? It's a week's notice and you get paid. And she was down. She said, yeah, I'm going to go in. So props to her for keeping Lauren Murphy's fight alive, I guess you could say. But I'm going to go with Lauren Murphy winning this fight just because she's experienced being in the UFC. She's very good at throwing jabs, and her boxing is excellent. I think she's tough. And Liliyaf, from the fight that I saw, doesn't move at all. She literally stands there, goes forward, no head movement. And that's just going to be easy pickings for Lauren Murphy here. Um, Lauren Murphy is in conversations to go for the flyweight division champion. She's in the conversation of the championship, who should fight next. And she was about to fight number 3 in the flyweight division. So it's her fight to lose. If Liliyaf can win out of sheer strength and just fuck her up, you always do have that puncher's chance. But I think Lauren Murphy has way more to lose, and she understands that. And her boxing and striking are just so many levels above Liliyaf that I don't see her losing this fight. So I'll see the odds. I'm sure she's a favorite. So not you can't bet a lot of money on there, but that is my choice. I think Lauren Murphy takes one for the US, and then we are 1-1 versus Russia. Feels more like US versus Russia here. There's a lot of those going on. And yeah, 1-1. So I think Lauren Murphy gets it done. And, you know, I did not mean any disrespect when I said she looks like she's from Alaska. That's one of my favorite parts about her. She's gritty and she just looks like a fighter, somebody you could root for. So shout out to Lauren Murphy and get it done. Your fight to lose. No pressure. All right. So moving on to the third fight of the main card, which would be Alexander Volkov versus Walt Harris. And Alexander Volkov is obviously from Russia with a record of 31-8. So homeboy has been doing this for a very long time with a lot of people, has a lot of experience. And then you got Walt Harris from Alabama, Georgia. And his record is 13-8. And what can I say? When I first started doing the research on these fights, I watched their last 2 fights. I think you could tell a lot about a fighter, where they're at, what their style is, and who they're becoming from their last 2 fights. You can't watch 5 fights ago, because if he lost that one, it means nothing, because he could have gotten better in the span of 3 fights after that. So you watch their last 2 recent fights to see who they are and who they were, and see if they can correct anything that they fucked up in the first one. And Alexander Volkov's last 2 fights were against Curtis Blades and Greg Hardy. In the Greg Hardy fight, he won because they were in Moscow, Russia. So I think there was added like home field advantage, and Greg Hardy was just starting off. So Volkov's experience in the UFC and in the ring gave him a huge advantage over Greg Hardy. But the moment he fought Curtis Blades, he was taken down to the ground. Curtis Blades held him down, got him tired, and just ground and pound him to hell until, he won that 5-round decision. But that being said, Volkov has a karate background, so he's going to kick you a lot. He's going to keep his distance. He's very stubborn to take you down to the ground. And he does this like stick and move. He hits you and moves, tries to break you down as the fight goes on. He does like going distance, 5 rounds. He did that with Greg Hardy. He did that with Curtis Blades. So his cardio is not an issue in this fight. He's very well versed in how to expend his energy throughout all 5 rounds to make sure that he can make it to that 5th round. The only thing I would say is that the moment he gets tired, he starts dropping his hands. So he's very easily hit as the fight goes on. And he is very easily taken down, but he has great ground defense. Curtis Blades, anybody else, he probably would have finished in the 3rd or 4th round in that fight. But the fact that the only reason Alexander Volkov was kept alive was because of his great ground defense. So, I don't see Walt Harris taking him down to the ground. He's not that type of guy. He's more of a striker. And this fight is going to be mainly on the feet, unless somebody gets in trouble and then shoots down just to get maybe rest or an advantage. Takedowns do account for a lot of pointage if you can achieve one. So if somebody's losing the round, you will see them try to get that takedown to add points and see if they could maybe win a round here or there. Now, Walt Harris, on the other hand, is a brawler. His last two fights both ended in TKO. It was against Overeem and Oleinik. He won the Oleinik fight. He lost the Overeem fight. The Oleinik fight literally took 12 seconds. He kneed him on the chest and then took a right hand to the chin, and Oleinik was out. I would contribute that to not only Walt Harris's power, but the fact that Oleinik is very old. Um, Oleinik did bounce back and went on a win streak after that. But the fact that he was very accurate and very fast and powerful, it makes him a very scary fighter in the division. When it came to fighting against Overeem, he just met somebody that was more patient, knew the game, knew I'm not going to exchange with this guy. He did understand that Walt Harris has a lot of power, and Oleinik was just too experienced, too versed to play that game. He did fuck him up in the first round, but Overeem seemed to weather that storm and then started taking them down and then eventually knocked them out. I think it was just out of pure exhaustion. And that's one thing that concerns me about Walt Harris is that there's no cardio there. Literally in the second round, Overeem had him on the ground and Homeboy was breathing super hard, heavy breaths, which is obviously a sign of just exhaustion. And eventually that's how the fight ended because Overeem was on top of him. Um, Walt Harris was just super tired and couldn't get back up. The ref gave him enough warnings to say, you got to do something, you got to move. Overeem was just on top of him, just ground and pound. It got to the point where Overeem was looking at the ref and saying, like, dude, like, he's not doing anything. What are we supposed to do? And the ref just called it. He said, fuck it. Like, you're not doing anything. It seems like you've given up. They just gave him the fight. They gave him the knockout. So his cardio is very concerning. But I'm going to pick Walt Harris to win just because Alexander Volkov literally doesn't start going till maybe the second or third round. And I don't think he's even going to get there. I think Walt Harris is going to come out like a bat out of hell and try to do what he did to Oleinik and Overeem because he has had success with that. I think his aggression, his accuracy, and his speed are all going to be great contributors to him knocking Alexander Volkov out. And the US is going to be 2-0. The US is going to be 2-1. And starting to look like a Cold War kind of situation, Russians versus USA here. Walt Harris is definitely somebody you guys can keep an eye on. And I know I will. This fight is probably not going to go on the ground. So do not blink. Do not go to the bathroom. Yeah, it's going to be a fast fight. So I'm going to pick Walt Harris to win the third fight of the night. All right, so now we get into the co-main event and the fourth fight of UFC 254, and it is a very good one. Not only will it determine who's going to fight Israel Adesanya next for the title, it's also very interesting because both fighters have a similar style of fighting, and you're just going to see a very technical, very thought out fight with the chances of somebody getting knocked the fuck out. So the fight I'm talking about is Robert Whittaker from New Zealand versus Jared Cannonier from Texas, USA. Yeehaw. So Robert's last two fights were Darren Till and Israel Adesanya. He did lose the fight against Israel Adesanya. No shocker there. I think Israel was just way more patient, knew where to throw and land his punches, and just saw something that Robert didn't. He saw a lot more openings than Whittaker did on him, and obviously Israel Adesanya got the knockout. And against Darren Till, he had came back, and there was this rumor that something had happened with his daughter. It turned out to be not true. It just turned out that Robert Whittaker was losing the love for the game, and he took some like a hiatus, and he just took a little break, and then he came back against Darren Till, and he said he was energized. He missed the game, and I guess it kind of showed because once he came back, he was more patient. Uh, he was more aware of his surroundings and kept a good length away from Darren Till. Fucked up Darren Till's leg, and then started picking him apart. Now, what I saw in both of those fights was that Robert Whittaker kind of headhunts from the beginning of the round. He doesn't try to hit you in the body. He'll try some kicks here and there just to establish length and kind of make you respect and be aware of the fact that he could kick you. But most of the time, he's just trying to hit you in the head. He kind of rush punches, which is like a fury of punches. And what concerns me there is that Robert does that a lot, and it does leave him open to counter strikes, which obviously helped Israel Adesanya greatly in their bout because that's how he got him. He got him with a counter punch at the end of the first round, and just more of that in the second round till he got knocked out. That's a very big concern when it comes to Robert's game. But Robert is a former champion, and he knows what it takes to go all 5 rounds, where Jared Cannonier does not. Robert is a slow starter, so it's kind of yin and yang when it comes to Jared Cannonier, seeing that Jared Cannonier is a very fast starter. So Jared Cannonier's last 2 fights were against Jack Hammerson and Anderson Silva, which some people consider to be one of the greatest fighters of our era. So he beat a couple of old guys, but a very good test to see where he was at. The fight against Anderson Silva kind of got called because Cannonier hit him with the monster leg kick to the side of the knee that just blew out Anderson Silva's knee, and that was it. That's all she wrote. He won against him. Nice little, he could brag to people that he beat Anderson Silva maybe in the later years of his career, but still, a win over one of the greatest fighters is not too shabby. And yeah, he's very patient, which is good against Robert Whittaker. He's strong. Uh, I saw Jack Hammerson trying to take him down and just couldn't keep him down, and that was Jack Hammerson's game, was to wrestle him down, and just by sheer strength, he kept getting up and would just not let him get taken down to the ground. So Robert Whittaker is going to have to stand with him for most of the fight. And that's where things could get dicey for Robert Whittaker. Cannonier likes to attack the lead leg from the beginning. A lot of pop shots and a lot of quick hits just to eat away that lead leg. So Robert won't have that striking force that he usually depends on. If you can't take him down, then you got to stand with him. So Cannonier's literally going to use what Robert Whittaker did to Darren Till. And, this fight is so close, and that's why it's so interesting, because both fighters are kind of the same fighter. They're both patient. They both like to wear you down, and they both possess this knockout power and can kind of break you down systematically. But when it comes to who I think would have the advantage in this fight and who I think is ultimately going to win because of it, I'm going to pick Jared Cannonier to win this fight, just because not only do I think he's hungrier for the belt, given that Robert Whittaker has said that sometimes he loses the love for the game, that could be an advantage for Cannonier. Cannonier knows that if he wins this fight, his next fight is a title shot. So there's more incentive for him to win. Whereas Robert Whittaker, yes, he does want to win back his belt, but at the same time, there's not that hunger in him. He's been to the top of the division, and he has had that, and Cannonier hasn't. And I think there's something to say towards somebody who's hungrier. You're gonna fight stronger. You're gonna fight more. I think there's more dog in you asked Jimmy Butler about that going against the Lakers in the NBA Finals. There's something about somebody being a dog that uh, gives you a little bit of advantage. Not a lot because Jimmy lost, but they could have been swept, and Jimmy prevented that from happening. And I think Jared Cannonier has this dog and this hunger in him that will ultimately put him above Robert Whittaker. And I think the fact that Jared Cannonier attacks not only the head, the body, and the legs, when Robert only tries to go for the head and the legs, will be a good advantage on him. And I think if you're looking at knockout power, I think Jared's knockout power is way more of a factor than Robert Whittaker, especially because he still has that as the fights go on. So I'm picking Jared Cannonier for the win in the co-main event, and then I can't wait to see him. I know you're not supposed to look ahead because then you look dumb, but I can't wait to see him fight against uh, Israel Adesanya, just because it seems like everybody thought that if there was one person that could beat Israel Adesanya, it would be Robert Whittaker, just because of his fighting style. And now you got somebody with the same fighting style, but a little bit more patient. I like to call him the Black James Bond, just because he's always calm, cool, and collected in that ring. And that was like an attribute that I looked at and was like, wow, if this guy could do that and keep his cool and keep his mind on that game plan and not divert from it, sky's the limit. There's something to be said about somebody that could keep calm when everything is going insane all around you, especially in a UFC fight. Some guys trying to take your head out. And if you can stay focused and there's a plan, and you can trust what you're good at, that's going to take you very far in the division. And usually it takes you to the championship round, where usually those guys are the type of guys to win those fights. So I can't wait to see Jared Cannonier versus Israel Adesanya, but it is the fight game. So if I get this one right, just because it's so close and how similar styles they are, you can't really blame me for choosing wrong. But I have a good hunch that Jared Cannonier is going to win. And like the previous fights, I will be betting money on that. And now to the main event, which is Justin Gaethje versus Khabib. And most likely the one that you guys all fast forward to if you guys didn't want to hear about the previous fights. That's okay. Most people are excited about this fight just because it's not just another 155 pounder going against Khabib. There's something that's very different about Justin Gaethje that none of the other guys that have fought Khabib before have had, and that is a wrestling background. Uh, Khabib being from Dagestan, he is surrounded by some of the best wrestlers in the world. If you look at the rankings in wrestling, most of those guys are from Dagestan. It's like iron sharpens iron. You only become the best in wrestling when you wrestle the best. And these guys are wrestling the best all the time. So you could see why Khabib's background is so wrestle heavy and why nobody's figured out how to beat him, because every time somebody has stepped in the ring with Khabib, they know what he's going to do. He's going to try to wrestle you down and systematically fucking bombard you till you give up, till you break, and then he submits you. And it's a very straightforward plan. Everybody knows he's going to do it. The only difference between guys that lay out their plan and lose and guys like Khabib who lay out their plan and win is that by sheer force, skill, and just being able to not divert from the plan, he tends to get the win because of how strong he is, how skilled he is, and how focused he is in that ring. And most guys that he's wrestled against aren't to his level of wrestling. Some guys like Connor did have good ground defense, but it proved to be not enough for somebody like Khabib. Connor's a striker, and same thing with Justin Poirier. I don't know why people thought Tony Ferguson was going to be the one to beat him, but I never thought that. I thought maybe because Tony had good jiu-jitsu, but at the same time, people would say Tony wanted you on the ground. He wanted his back towards you, and I would just see Khabib's strength overpowering him every time they fought. So I never understood why people said Tony was the one, but I there's something different about Justin Gaethje. Most of these guys who fight Khabib go into this octagon so worried about when they're gonna get taken down, not how or if, because they know that's gonna happen, or when they're gonna get taken down. Are they gonna be able to get up? And so they focus more on defense than offense. And when it comes to Justin Gaethje, I think he's the only one that will step into that ring, not having to worry about whether Khabib is going to take him down. And can he handle that when that happens? I think he has a mindset where he thinks, yes, I can handle it. So I'm going to focus on offense. And if it eventually, when it gets taken down, I will be able to hold my own on the ground against Khabib. But given that he comes with an offensive mind, that's what I think is the key to beating Khabib, because these guys are so scared to get taken down, they forget to punch. And Justin doesn't have that problem, and he's a very good striker. If you look at a fight against Tony Ferguson, people consider Tony Ferguson a very good striker, and look at what Justin Gaethje did to him. He systematically fucked him up. He didn't get too eager when he saw that he had rocked Tony. He stayed calm, cool, collective, picked his shots, and eventually he got the knockout. Instead of rushing in and maybe getting hit with a counter punch, uh, I think if he sticks to that game plan where he knows he's good enough to hold his own when it comes to getting down to the ground with Khabib, but also to stay composed when he rocks Khabib and know that Khabib is going to try to circle the ring and maybe not to chase him, but cut the ring down and push him against the fence. He has a really great chance at beating Khabib and even knocking him out. Khabib, I wouldn't say has like a granite chin. I think he's more elusive. He knows how to move once he gets rocked. He knows how to distance himself. And most of the time, their fighters would allow him to distance himself because they were so scared that if they got too close too soon, he would just take him down. I don't think Justin Gaethje is going to have that problem. He has been wrestling since he was 4. And you're going to see a very confident Justin Gaethje, a more confident fighter going in against Khabib. And if Justin can pick his shots, move forward, cut the ring from Khabib, he has a very good chance at beating Khabib. And that's why I'm choosing Justin Gaethje to become the new 155-pound championship in the UFC. Not just because I am a counter fanboy and I hate the fact that Khabib choked my boy out, but just because I've never been this confident to see somebody walk in and know that they can hold their own against Khabib. The only thing that would concern me would be that Justin Gaethje hasn't really shown us his wrestling, and the last time he wrestled competitively, I would say would be like his amateur years, and maybe there's some kind of ring rust when it comes to wrestling. If you watch the UFC countdown show, you could see that he brought in his new coach or his old coach from when he was in the university, and he is helping him maybe get back to the level where he would wrestle back in the day. So hopefully Justin Gaethje gets this win, and I don't know. There's something about Khabib, there's arrogance. There's like, I don't want to fight this guy. I don't want to do this, but he calls himself the greatest of all time. I think John Jones is. So there's something about the one guy that needs to get humbled that I look forward to at every single fight. And that's why I tune into these Khabib fights, just like everybody tuned in to watch Floyd Mayweather fight, because you want to see this guy get humbled. And it never really happened with Floyd, and it might not happen with Khabib, but I think Justin Gaethje has the better chance. at doing this. I think when you compare these two fighters, one side by side, you look at the cardio, both have that. Wrestling, both have that. Striking, Khabib is known to get a couple hits here and there. He's pretty good at striking. People say that he's not. I don't know why. You most people can't rock Connor the way he did. So it's no joke and shouldn't be taken lightly. I think if you compare their striking game, Justin Gaethje wins that by a mile. But he has to be aware of Khabib's counter punches and the fact that he does this eagle punch, where it's like a very sneaky under like uppercut. It's a weird fucking thing, so he should watch out for that. But I'm excited, man. I am very excited. Can't wait for Saturday. It's gonna be early, but this is what UFC fans do. We watch whenever, whatever time it is, because the UFC usually gives us some of the best fights in the world. So I can't wait to see what happens. Hopefully, all my picks are correct. I am going to go to the casino and do a parlay, which means that I will pick my picks. And if they all win, then I win the bet. And if one of them loses, then I lose the whole bet. Doesn't matter if all four other guys win and one lost, they all have to win. And I think I've never been so confident enough to bet a lot of money. But in this parlay, I will be putting down a significant amount and see where it goes. So hopefully you guys enjoyed my UFC 254 card breakdown. And let me know who you guys are going to win. Let me know who you guys think is going to win. And if you're listening on Spotify and want to see some of the graphics, maybe how some of these fighters look, feel free to go on YouTube. And if you're on YouTube and I know it's hard to watch a whole video, maybe it's easier to listen to with headphones, please go to my Spotify or Amazon podcast, Apple podcast, and find me there. Subscribe and get the show notifications. You'll get notified every time a show drops, especially some like this that are time sensitive. You want to listen to this before the fights. So if you're listening to this after the fights, hopefully I was right. And tune into the next one on time by getting those notifications. So thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. So thank you.